Hello, I'm Andrei.
And I'm Alex.
And welcome to our little hub where we will be presenting Gary, our robot for this FTC season. So let us start with the chassis.
Can you flip it over so you can see it better?
Come closer, please. So, as you can see, our motors are placed inside the chassis plates because when the season began, we thought that we need as much space as possible in the middle of the robot. As you can see, two of our main systems are placed in the middle of the robot.
Right, so even though last season we actually had the motors placed right here, now we have a 90-degree transmission on each of the wheels, so we can save as much space as possible. So if you look here, we are actually using two bevel gears for our 90-degree one-on-one transmission, and firstly we actually thought of a 2-to-1 transmission, but that was not fast enough for getting enough points in the autonomous period.
And to keep the motors in place, we are using 4 custom motor mounts. And they are making their job because we have used them for like 7 months. They are still okay.
And they're very sturdy because they also connect to the front plate of the motor right here with 2 screws.
The chassis is still not moving at the desired speed because of the weight of the robot and the one-to-one transmission, but we couldn't risk going faster because with the lack of odometry, we wouldn't actually have any precision.
So moving on from our chassis, let's now go to our intake system. So if we come closer here, you can see that our ramp is the shape of a dustpan, and we have 2 sets of compliant wheels that actually guide our ring into the stacking system right here. We are using a 435 RPM Gobilda motor and a belt transmission.
We are using 2 sets of compliant wheels, as you can see, and when we installed them, we have used custom-made parts that are like some ovals because you can move them up and down. We can do that now because they are fixed, but we could adjust their height based on what we wanted, to have more pressure on the ring or less pressure on the ring. Also, we have adapters on the second set of wheels that we can move right and left and change the position of the wheels according to the ramp, creating more pressure or less pressure to the disc.
We are also using a custom motor mount for our Gobilda motor right here, which also has an adjustable position, so we can tighten the belt more easily based on the positions of the compliant wheels. Right, so also this isn't the first version of our ramp. We firstly made a ramp out of wood. The first version wasn't good because the ramp was made out of wood at the bottom here as well, and so because of friction with the tiles, we didn't have enough precision on our robot movements. So we actually replaced that with a plastic part, as you can see. But this wasn't a good solution either because it would break very often when collecting the rings.
And I still have PTSD from that sound.
Exactly. And so we opted for this aluminum version that we have here now. And funny story, our place where we made all of our custom parts was actually closed because of Corona, and so we had to make this one in this garage right here with a hammer. And so the way we actually avoided friction with this one is that it is a bit flexible, so it can move up and down very easily, and so it doesn't put as much pressure on the tiles, and we don't have any friction with the game terrain, so to speak, right? And also another very important thing is this plastic part right here that guides our rings into the stacking system, right? So it actually pushes them to the right whenever they leave. And so they always go right here in the same place in the stacking system, so we can easily lift them up into position.
As you can see, the width of the upper part of the ramp is smaller than the diameter of the ring, and with the help of the piece of plastic on the left, which acts like a spring, the ring gets launched perfectly into the stacking system.
Right, so now moving on to the stacking system, we actually hired Oscar here to come help us with this video. He'll probably leave later though, because we don't have any treats anymore. Right, so if you can come closer. This is our stacking system, and this is where all the rings end up after the intake system does its job. As you can see, we can stack up to 3 rings in it because of its height. And this is the initial position where it collects the rings, and if we lift it up, this is its final position where it readies the rings for going into our launcher, right? And the way we launch the rings is by pushing them right here with the feeding system, right? We push them inside of our launcher, and the wheel does the rest of the job, right? So actually this arm is shaped like a circle, so we can push them diagonally inside of the launching system and towards this wheel. Now if we lift the robot up, we can actually look at the lifting system that helps us put the rings into position.
I think the lifting system is the most unique part in our robot. We were inspired to do this part by looking at the crankshaft of a car. I mean on a 3D project, not in real life.
Yeah, so it's the same
It's shaped like that, and as you can see, the servo powers it and it lifts the system up.
And we actually had some problem with the power of the servo, because initially it didn't have enough, and so we had to flip it around 180 degrees to have a lower leverage here.
We could easily get it up with only 2 rings, but we had to lift up 3 rings, so we had to change its position because the weight was too much for the servo to handle.
Right, so it's pretty simple. It just lifts the stacking system up to our desired position, and it doesn't go higher than this because we stop it with a little improvised part right here that's below our launching wheel.
And finally, the launching system. As you can see, we are using a 6000 RPM Gobilda motor combined with a thin Rhino wheel that compresses the rings as they enter the launching system.
And this allows us to achieve a higher speed in order to launch the rings into high goal. And so because of the shape inside the launcher and the fact that we are using only 1 wheel, the rings usually launch to the left. And this was actually a design problem of ours, because we intended to go forwards with this thing right here. But we kept it because in the autonomous period we could start the robot on the right side of the field, and when it went forwards it was already in position of launching into the tower goal, because it launched to the left, so that was good for us.
And also because the launching system is heavy and the motor is placed on the left side, the launching system tends to go inside the robot, preventing us from fully going up, lifting the stacking system. So we came up with this improvisation and it keeps the launching system in place. And now for the Wobble System.
We actually designed it as in the shape of an arm, and it is 3D printed. So we 3D printed because this material would be a lot lighter than aluminum, for example, and the downwards force on the motor would be too high, right? And so we used a lighter material to build this one.
And to find the right size, we conducted some simulations in SolidWorks. We tested an arm that was something like this small. I think that's something like that, like 15 millimeters. And we conducted simulations to see the stress that the motor put on the surface where it connected. And we came with this design, with its weight and width.
Right. And so the way it works is this servo right here grabs the wobble ball and then lifts it up. Right, it's pretty simple. And we actually use this elephant skin anti-slip material to have a better grip on the wobble ball. And so the way we thought about this initially was to grab it under this thicker part, right? So it couldn't go down anymore. And so we had a much better grip on it. But one of the problems we faced with this system is because of our launching system that launches to the left, our rings would actually hit the wobble ball, right? And so we had to make some functions in programming to have it lifted faster, and so the wobble ball would go down like this, right? And so we could preload the wobble ball and still shoot the rings. So this was Gary, our robot for this year's competition.
Me, Alex and Oscar are wishing you good luck in the rest of your season.
Good luck, and thank you for watching.